Good evening and welcome. It's Friday, it's 8 o'clock, and that means it's time for Buster's Virtual Jazz Club. Going out live on YouTube, live streaming. Welcome everybody. I hope you had a great week. The weather's turned nice at last. Of course, I'd like to say a big thank you to all my regular patrons who support me through Patreon, and also to everyone who makes a donation on PayPal. It really means a lot, and it's been a massive help this year. And thanks for all the messages you send as well. I do appreciate that. Don't forget to visit my website, the link's below here, where you can watch all of the past shows. They're all up there now, and you can also see who my upcoming guests will be, and check out our merchandise which we've got. So as I'll be slurping, this is what they call product placement. I'll be drinking from this as we go along. So on to tonight's show. Another fantastic guest this evening. He's a saxophonist and composer who first came to prominence in the mid-1980s with the influential big band Loose Tubes. In 1992, he formed the eclectic co-led quartet Perfect Houseplants, a group that released 6 albums and collaborated with classical artists such as the Orlando Consort, Andrew Manns and Pamela Thorby. In the mid-90s, saw him recording and performing with many jazz, folk and pop artists, including Django Bates, Kenny Wheeler, Norma Winston, June Tabor, Stereolab, Yah Wobble, Robert Wyatt, Prefab Sprout, Don Romario, Thomas Dolby and Radiohead. In 2003, he joined Seb Roachford's Polar Bear, which over a period of 12 years recorded 6 groundbreaking albums. The band's second album was nominated for the 2005 Mercury Award and later appeared in Jazzwire's 100 albums that shook the world. The band's 5th album was also nominated for a Mercury Award in 2013. In 2007, he was a featured soloist in Mark Anthony Turnage's About Water, which premiered on the South Bank. He collaborated several times more with Turnage, performing on A Man Descending and more recently as one of the featured musicians in the opera Anna Nicole, which premiered at the Royal Opera House in London 2011. In 2009, his quintet album In Deep was released to critical acclaim. The following year saw the release of his first big band album, Days Like These, with the Hamburg-based NDR Big Band. The same year, he was awarded the Parliamentary Jazz Musician of the Year. In 2013, he released Ellington in Anticipation, a radical reworking of Duke Ellington melodies with an all-star lineup, including Seb Roachford and Liam Noble. The album received numerous 4- and 5-star reviews and was Mojo Magazine's Jazz Album of 2013 and nominated as Best Jazz CD of 2013 by the Parliamentary Awards. An invitation to perform at the New York Rochester Jazz Festival in 2014 led to the formation of his trio Malaya with bassist Jasper Hoiby and pianist Liam Noble. Their debut album was released in December 2015 to critical acclaim, and this was followed up by a second album in 2017 with a 21-date tour. In 2016, he was awarded Jazz FM Instrumentalist of the Year and also nominated for the British Composer Awards for his composition With One Voice. More recently, he completed a major jazz and orchestral work titled Days on Earth for Jazz Sextet and 30-piece jazz orchestra, released on Edition Records in January 2019. And I'm pleased to say he's here with us now, live on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the very wonderful Mr. Mark Lockheart. Hello, mate.
Hello, very nice to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for giving up your evening, and thanks for sharing all this fantastic music that you've created with us. Once again, I mean, there's such a great amount of great music to pick from. We've just selected a few sample things, but there's even within that there's a real breadth of work, and I think that's something that really comes across with the body of work that you've created, Mark. It's some really interesting stuff, a lot of cross-section things across different genres as well, so I'm looking forward to playing that. But before we start, how have you been? Because I know it's been a funny year. There's been and you've actually not been too well. What was you at the beginning of all this?
I've been okay. It started not very well because I got quite badly affected by COVID at the beginning of all this. So
Yeah.
it's been a long journey, kind of just getting over it really, and gradually building my strength up and getting back to playing and practicing. But it's been okay. I mean, it's just keeping the faith and keeping motivated. So I've been writing quite a lot, and I've been doing bits of recording at home. So I went and purchased a really nice microphone, which was
Great.
a good investment as it turned out. So I've been recording a little bit at home. Like most people, like most musicians, I think, who are trying to get through this, you just get quite inventive with it, and you learn new techniques and new technology, So I've been doing a bit of
I think it's forced us all to sort of develop some skills, haven't it, that we've maybe have put off in the past with the technology and things like that. And maybe we've all kind of learned some useful things as well. But I know did you have a big tour lined up? There was an album at the beginning of last year. You had a big project on, didn't you? Was that cancelled, or did you lose some dates on that?
It was all cancelled, unfortunately. We had a tour with a new band that I formed a couple of years ago, and we had about 8 or 9 dates. The first ones were in April. And that's, of course, they were cancelled, and then it was rearranged for October, thinking we'd all be out of this by then, and that didn't happen. So that was very disappointing. So, I mean, we'll do them at some point. They'll be rearranged at some point, but who knows when.
We had a whole bunch of dates that basically they just put it back a whole year. And of course they've come round now, and they're still cancelled. And actually, some of the venues have shut, which is not very good. But
I know.
So and then they're not rebooking them anymore. It's just okay. Well,
there's going to be this big backlog of musicians, with gigs, isn't there? I mean.
But I think also there'll be a lot. I think there will be a lot of sort of parties and events and things like that, and people, wanting us to play for them, but the kind of concerts,
end of COVID parties.
I think I don't think it'll be a big kind of like VE day. I think it'll be gradual, but I think we'll start getting busy again. At some point, once someone fires that starting gun, it'll just be like I don't know, trying to stay optimistic.
Buster, it might be like the millennium where we all thought we were going to get incredible, well-paid New Year's Eve gigs, and then none of them materialised.
Well, I've got a funny story about that, which is, I won't get into, but I did, and then it got cancelled, but we got paid anyway, so I had the night off. So I did quite well, Millennium, so I'm quite hopeful. I was quite lucky with that. But I know, it was all a bit of a flop, wasn't it, that? But you've got a new band coming up as well, haven't you? Coming out. So is this something you put together since the lockdown, or is this something you already had lined up?
This was the band that had the cancelled gigs. So it's a new quartet with Elliot Galvin, who's a young piano player. He plays keyboards in it. Tom Herbert, who I've worked a lot with in my projects and Polar Bear, and Dave Smith on drums, who you probably know.
Very good.
And we did record an album. I mean, we'll be hearing a track of that later on, hopefully.
Well, you've kindly given us an exclusive little premiere there, which is always nice to get.
Which I'm remotely mixing at the moment. That's the other big thing that I've been spending a lot of days on, just mixing it with someone.
So we've got an exclusive. That's fantastic. So we're going to play out with that. So we're going to finish up with that. We've got a lot of music to get through, of course. And so let's start with the track. We'll talk about this. Perhaps we'll come back to this in a minute. We'll talk a bit about Loose Tubes and where you got started. So I think we'll just start by playing this track, and then we can talk a bit about the band. And we're going to start with a track from Perfect Houseplants, which is a wonderful quartet which you had, and it was co-led. Is that right, or was it a?
It was led by the three of us: Huw, me, and Dudley. We did all the writing.
Fantastic. And there was a number of albums, but you've picked a track from a 2000 album, New Folk Songs, called Pageant. And is there anything you want to tell us about that track? Is there anything behind that, or that album that you?
I was listening to some of. I was listening to some of this stuff because it seems like a long time ago that we did those records. And we were very lucky to have a deal with Lynn Records at the time. So this one came out on Lynn. And I think this track, I chose this track because it it just represents the kind of vibe of it and the kind of openness for me. But yeah, there were lots of things I could have chosen, but I like.
Well, it's a great energy, doesn't it? And there's a lot of kind of interplay with the band, and there's we'll talk about it afterwards, because I keep doing this. So I say I'm going to play a track, and then I waffle on for 10 minutes. So let's hear it, and then we'll talk about it. This is Pageant. It's from New Folk Songs, and we've got some pictures to accompany this as well. Some old pics and some more recent ones as well. Yes, that was Perfect Houseplants featuring my guest Mark Lockhart on the soprano saxophone there. Yeah, a fantastic band, Mark, and great musicians. We were
Thank you.
just chatting there about some of the influences of that music, and I was saying that it's little, especially at the end, a little taste of minimalism perhaps in there, and you were saying Hugh's very, very big on the Brazilian stuff as well, and that you're very open to all these different influences of music. Was that? Is it? Do you think that's a conscious thing, or is it you just that you're drawn to each other because you have that kind of openness? You all have that openness.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was a conscious thing. I think, and in a way, it was a very natural line between Loose Tubes and this band, even though the music was very different. You know, Loose Tubes, everyone was into lots of different things. You know, there was township music in it. There was kind of rock. There was, you mentioned minimalism, you know. And I think when I met Huw, particularly, I kind of was very attracted to his writing and the way he was just so free with music. You know, he would listen to kind of folk music, Brazilian music, Messian, you know, I mean, the whole thing. I heard a lot of music through Huw. And so I think with Houseplants, when we got that together, we didn't really think what it was going to be like. We all wrote tunes. Well, the three of us, Huw, myself, and Dudley Phillips, we wrote pieces and brought them to rehearsals. And they were very different, but somehow we made them kind of work together and get a sound, you know.
Yeah.
So it was an incredible experience. And I learned so much about writing and, you know, and just being brave about just going down a route and not worrying about a stylistic thing.
Yeah.
That's always been kind of inspiring to me. That's always kind of been my ethos a little bit, really, you know.
And do you think that and so, you know, is that directly, do you think, from the Loose Tubes experience, or was there something before that? How did you get started in playing music? Do you come from a musical family?
I come from a very musical family. My dad is obsessed with music. I mean, so I guess I was going to be obsessed by music, or there was a good chance, you know. But
there was lots of different types of music on when you were growing up then as well, like, or was it a jazz household, or
it was mostly music? Jazz. So I guess it was a jazz household, but he would play other music, and he knew about classical music as well, you know. So I'd wake up and he'd be playing Ella Fitzgerald or Dave Brubeck or something, you know. And so I was exposed to it like super early, you know, when I was little. So I think he was a massive part of that. And then we lived in America for a year when I was 10, and I heard a lot of music in America through my dad, you know.
Formative time as well, yeah.
Yeah, my dad would buy records in America. He'd buy quite a lot of records in America, and I'd listen to them and absorb them, you know, all kinds of things.
So that was a fairly natural kind of process then for you to be not to be boxed into one kind of thing. Yeah,
and you know, my dad in 1971 in America, my dad would order jazz records, but there'll be a Burt Bacharach record in there, or an Andy Williams record or something, you know, something that wasn't jazz. But I was checking all that out as well, you know, and I'm thinking, and I still love Burt Bacharach. I think he's amazing.
Well, yeah, it's great stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. And his arranging as well, which he's not always credited with, you know, is fantastic, I think.
So, how did the Loose Tubes thing come along then, and getting and playing in London with all those guys then?
Well, it was because I was in a band with Steve Berry and John Paracelli, called Let's Eat.
Let's Eat.
Let's Eat. The band was called Let's Eat because we used to have long lunches when we rehearsed.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But and I knew Graham Collier, and some people who know about Loose Tubes will know that Graham Collier was the instigator of that.
Yeah. Well, it's come up a lot on the show. We've played quite a lot of Loose Tube stuff. So, I mean, I thought we'd not necessarily do it, but it'd be interesting to sort of talk about your part into that. And of course, the ripples of that band are just incredible, aren't they? Throughout the British jazz kind of movement, and as the band ceased to exist, you all kind of went off and made these kind of like small groups, super groups of all the things. And there seems to, and then the ripples of that as well are just incredible. So, I mean,
yeah, it was an amazingly fertile scene, Liz Tubes.
Yeah,
and there were some incredible things that came out of it. And again, going back to that openness of just music as being music, and not worrying about whether we were playing jazz changes or whether it was just music, and if it was good or bad music, you know.
And well, so we've played a bit of Perfect Houseplants, and that band, of course, as I said in the intro, made 6 albums. So I mean, that's quite a body of work for a quartet, for a jazz quartet, and to get that sound together and explore all those sound worlds. And of course, at the time, you're still working with some of the other musicians and doing other things as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, it went on for quite a long time, and we explored a lot of different things. And you mentioned in the bit at the beginning with the Biog, we worked with an early music group, the Orlando Consort. They were 4 singers, early music singers, and we took plain chant and kind of messed about with that, and then eventually we made a record of it, improvising around their plain chant. So it was a brilliant scene, the whole thing was great, really.
So I think next we're gonna play a bit of Polar Bear.
Yeah,
I've got on that. Yeah. And so this was more, we're getting into sort of 2000s now at this point, and this was, so you these are sort of slightly younger group of students who you would have met through teaching, because I'm guessing at the conservatoire. Is that how that came about?
No, it didn't. Okay. But funnily enough, but there was a good chance that it could have. No, I didn't know Seb or Tom or Pete Wareham.
Right.
I just got this phone call one day from Seb Rochford and said, would I join his band?
Great. I assumed it was from, because there was Tom was at the Guildhall, wasn't he? I don't think Seb was, and no. Pete was, I think. So there was a little scene there as well, wasn't there? But you weren't teaching at the Guildhall then?
I wasn't teaching at the Guildhall then, no. I was teaching at Trinity.
Right, okay.
I taught at Trinity for quite a long time, but... no, so I just got this call from Seb, who I didn't know, and he introduced himself, and I said, have we met? And he said, I saw you last night at the 606. And I said, oh, why didn't you say hello? And I can't remember it. I think it wasn't, he had to go or something, or it wasn't, I was chatting to someone else.
Yeah.
And he said, he was very lovely. He said, oh, I love your playing, and I'd love you to join my band. So
yeah.
I wasn't being big time, but I didn't know who he was. So I said, can you send me a tape? So he sent, or a CD, he sent me a CD in the post, and it was great. It was the first demo that Polar Bear did with another sax player who left. I don't know why he left. Yeah. So they wanted another tenor player.
Yeah.
And then the first gig I did with them was a ball in Oxford University ball, in the summer, where everyone gets completely lashed, and that was my first gig. And then we made all these records, and the whole thing was another amazing learning experience for me, and a wonderful time. So,
well, for those who are not familiar with the band, I mean, it's quite an experimental, cutting-edge band, isn't it? Straight away from the lineup, first of all, there's 2 saxophones, bass and drums, and then a sampler guy who's working on electronics and sampling, right? And
that's right. It started without the electronics. It started with 2 tenors, bass and drums. So the first album we did doesn't have the laptop, the electronics on it.
Yeah.
But all the other records do. So it kind of it changed quite a bit, through
Yeah, well,
30.
he plays quite a role in it, doesn't he? As we're going to see, we've
Yeah.
got a live gig here we're going to play. And 2 Mercury Award nominations. That's quite something. That really is. It's an amazing achievement.
It was amazing, actually, and the video that I've chosen, it was always one of my favourite things because it was a tenor and balloon duet. And on this tune, basically my role was to duet with Leafcutter John, who was the electronics guy, with a balloon, getting sounds out of a balloon.
Amazing.
And this was always good fun and really, really great as well, actually, musically, very often.
And incredibly hit band as well. And it's nice to be. It must be nice playing to jazz to a full house of young people all kind of like nodding their heads and then getting into it. Yeah,
it was amazing. Yeah. I mean, unbelievable following of young people would follow us around, and it was amazing. Yeah.
Well, let's watch a clip. So this is from 2009, is it? I think live at the Spitz. This is a live gig. But was this part of? It mentions about a film or something in the. This is on YouTube. We've got this off YouTube, so we're only gonna show a little bit of it because we don't have time to play everything. But if people want to check it out, perhaps I'll put the link in below. It's not that I'll add it in later. But it mentions a documentary in that. Or did anything come of that?
Yeah, I think it came out, but I don't know how to get hold of it. I don't have a copy of it, but it was filmed actually quite nicely. And
they did a very nice job. Yeah, sound.
Yeah, and it was just before the Spitz closed down, actually, or was sold. So it was quite,
I remember going to a few gigs there. It was a nice sort of vibey place, wasn't it? And it's because they just redeveloped Spitalfields Market, hadn't they? And put the club in, and it was a music venue. And they used to have quite a lot of jazz gigs on there, didn't they? But then that all closed, didn't it?
It was a great venue, sweaty, steamy, great venue.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Well, let's watch a bit of this. And this is a track. So we're gonna. This is. I should have. Did we name check the Houseplants? So we did that. Yeah. So we should name check this. So you've got Pete Wareham on saxophone, along with yourself, 2 tenors. Yeah. Quite interesting. You and Pete. Did you do some soprano in this band as well, or was it just tenor?
No, we just played tenors in this band.
And Leafcutter John on electronics. Tom Herbert on the bass, great bass player, Tom Herbert. Something you've worked with a lot over the years. We're going to hear some more from, and Seb Rochford as well. They're a great pair, aren't they? Seb and Tom, the way they work together, the bass and drums, like that's a real kind of feature, isn't it?
It's great,
And this is a track called Tom Loves Alice Loves Tom.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, duet with a balloon there.
Yeah, there you go.
Put that on your CV.
That's not something you hear every day.
I mean, we were saying that. I mean, it's not just a novelty. I think that he really adds something there, sort of sound-wise, to the whole thing. I love that when you get these sort of like sound effects, and you think, oh, what's that? And it kind of, you're not quite sure what you're listening to, but it blends in with the music somehow. It's really clever, and to do it live as well is really. I mean, because usually people put that stuff on afterwards, don't they, when they mix things?
Yeah, and it was improvised. I mean, Leafcutter John would improvise his parts, just like we would. He would basically sample the saxophones was quite a lot of it, and then he'd change it electronically, and then kind of regurgitate it, deconstruct it, and recompose it.
Amazing.
So it was fascinating sonically. Lots of different things. I mean, people said it wasn't jazz. I can remember that a couple of early reviews. People saying, "Oh, this isn't jazz."
Well,
but
people have been saying that about all sorts of things, haven't they, for the last 100 years? So
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. Well, I think I'm sorry, folks. I've completely remiss of me. I've not said hello. We've got a few people in the chat box there, so just say hello, good evening to Laurie and Paul, Peter, Steve, Dave, Pete Gibbs, Mary Proudlux, and Andy Panay in the house. Hello, mate. Nice to see you.
Say hi to Andy for me.
Hi to Andy. Well, you've just done it, mate.
Oh, I've just done it. Okay,
you've
brilliant.
Just done it. Angus Blaney says, great interview, guys. And Steve Clark says, the Spitz was a superb venue. Yes, it was indeed, yeah.
It was, yeah.
I mean, what I'm getting from a lot, from listening to your music, Mark, is this idea of you where you're constantly putting yourself in situations which are very different and sort of you're having to create in a very different way, not just a different style of music, but a different musical approach or concept, I think. And is this something that you find is it a natural process, or is it something you're kind of drawn to, or do you feel like you deliberately put yourself in these situations to then see what happens, or is it a kind of mix of all these things, or is it more the people that you find you get drawn to, or what do you think about that? Is it something conscious, or is it a kind of just a natural thing where you're drawn in, do you think?
I mean, I think it's all those things. I think for me, the music has to be interesting and it for not to be too derivative of something else. Otherwise, I'm not that interested in it. I mean, it's a bit of a strange one because most of the CDs behind me are kind of American jazz. You know, that's kind of what I was obsessed with, you know, for many years. But when it comes to making my own music and exploring my own musicality, I want to do it in something that, you know, is doing something a little bit different. So I'm attracted to that. I'm attracted to improvising, obviously. That's my passion. I'd always rather improvise than read something, I think, although I'm happy to read something if it's a lovely thing to play. That gives me lots of pleasure as well. But so I think it's all those things, and of course it's the people. You know, it's the people. People have got to be nice, haven't they? Otherwise you don't want to work with them, you know.
But also I think with this is, well, it's interesting that you should say that, because that's come up quite a lot on this show, and I'm convinced that with jazz, there's something different about jazz in that you kind of got to get along, haven't you? Although we had Mark Fletcher on last week, and he was saying that sometimes the clash can create some sparks in the music, which can be interesting. And he's right, of course. But I think with when you're playing jazz and you're improvising the music, you're essentially creating the music, aren't you? You're creating the music on the spot. You're creating your part. You're not playing a fixed part like if you're doing a pop covers band or playing in a West End show. It's exactly the same moment. And famously, you know, those guys, they've sat next to each other for 20 years and they don't speak, you know, and things like that, because they can't stand the sight of each other, you know, and they just play this music every night. And actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure they'll get along very well. But you can't really do that with this music, can you? There's got to be some connection, I think, on a personal level where you can...
Yeah.
Jeff Simpkins, we spoke about, he said it boils down to trust. That's how he summed it up.
No, I think it does. I mean, there's always successful bands where they don't like each other. I mean, the Police was a good example. Apparently, Stuart Copeland hated Sting, didn't he?
Right.
But I think you're right. I think with jazz, it's a bit different because it's a vulnerable music. And when you're improvising, you're vulnerable. If you're improvising well, and you need people who you trust musically, you know, and otherwise, but particularly you trust them musically, and they're listening to you and you're working together as a team. I mean, so, and I think it's very fragile. I think good jazz, whether it's John Coltrane or Dave Brubeck, you know, it doesn't matter. Good jazz there's a vulnerability about it that makes it really good, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also there's something about, I mean, because what we all have to do, pick up gigs where you go along and you can turn up and play, but there's something about having a band of people where it works, and then doing a lot of gigs and going on the road and spending time together, and then the music evolves through that whole process. That's part of it, isn't it? It takes time, and you know, when you get into sort of 6 albums, of course, I should say we forgot to name check, didn't we? Dear Martin France, a wonderful drummer from Perfect Houseplants, who's featured a lot of records on this show. And when it works and you get a great lineup and you've got that relationship, it's a deep thing, isn't it? And it's, you know, it is. And you look at, you know, you listen to all the truly great jazz that we all love. You listen to Miles Davis, you know, and you realize they did an awful lot of playing together, you know. They did a massive amount of playing together. No wonder it sounded good. I mean, obviously that's not the only thing. They're all amazing. But it's the hours on the stage, isn't it? Yeah, and I remember the penny dropped with me when I went to see George Coleman, probably in the 80s, because we used to go to Ronnie Scott's all the time in the 80s because they had this cheap entrance fee. Yeah, we were talking about it last week. It's like £2.
Oh, were you? Yeah, it was brilliant. So and I remember going to see George Coleman, and I think I saw him most nights. And you know what? He played the same tunes every night, pretty much. And I thought, well, no wonder he sounds really good on these tunes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's getting some time in on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a few more in the chat box. Olivia Maguire, Mara and Olivia say hello.
Oh, say hello back.
And Alan and Sheila Lockhart are in Portsmouth.
Oh, that's my mum and dad. That's nice that they're
Mark's mum and dad. Hello, mum and dad. Oh, there we go. That's great. Yeah. Well, look, we got some more tracks here. So we're gonna look at another album here, and this is another whole project and whole world of music and musicians you work with, which of course kind of centered around Kenny Wheeler, who you work with, and you know, a lot of the great British jazz players that were kind of working around. And there's an album you made in 2013, which was Mirrors, which is a fantastic album. If anyone doesn't know that album, they should check that out. And it's with Nicky Arles, Norman Winston, Kenny Wheeler, Steve Watson, James Madgen on the drums, another fine young drummer, and with the local London Vocal Project as well with Pete Churchill.
Yeah. I should just say that this track I've chosen is just the three. Yeah. It's just the trio. It's Nicky Arles, Norma,
and yourself on soprano. But I thought I'd mention that the other people on that album.
Yeah, no, it's a great project, and it was towards the end of Kenny's life, and I was so delighted to be able to, you know, do a recording with him, because I think I depped in his big band once or twice. That was it, and so it was really a real treat for me to be asked to do this.
Fantastic.
But just going back to the vulnerability, that's kind of why I chose this track, because we didn't know it very well, really, when we recorded it. But it's got a lovely feeling to me about it, and it's a bit on the edge, and it's a little bit exploring. But anyway,
it's fantastic. It's a beautiful tune, singing about a hat. Yeah, and where does it come from? Was it somebody who wrote this? Do you know?
Stevie Smith wrote the lyrics.
Right.
And Kenny wrote the music.
Kenny wrote.
I don't know much about Stevie Smith, but Norma is majestic on this.
She's brilliant.
She's
absolutely brilliant. And Nicky Arles, of course, who was on this show.
I'm fiddling around in the background.
Oh, it's great. And so this was a kind of like fairly under rehearsed, shall we say, kind of thing. And then you just kind of did it on the studio. Obviously, you must have had a run through or two, but you're kind of putting yourself out there, aren't you? And it's a beautiful piece of music, and you really playing so nicely off each other. I think that's just what comes across as well. So let's hear that. This is The Hat. It's from The Mirrors 2013, which is on Edition Records. And as we said, Nicky Arles on the piano, Norman Winston, and my guest Mark Lockhart on the soprano.
Beautiful hat, more than anything, and through my hat, my beautiful hat, I see a wedding ring. The king will marry me and make me his own before all. I shall wear my hat and walk on the palace wall. I love my hat, my beautiful hat, more than anything. And through my hat, my beautiful hat, I see a wedding ring. The king will marry me and make me his own before all. And when I'm married, I shall wear my hat and walk on the palace wall. beautiful hat more than anything. And through my hat, my beautiful hat, I see a wedding ring. The king will marry me and make me his own before. And when I'm married, I shall wear my hat and walk on the palace wall. On the palace wall. I shall wear my hat on the palace wall. I shall wear my hat.
I hope you're enjoying the show. I just want to take a moment to tell you about a new way that you can help support me do this, and that is through patreon.com. That's right, I've got an account now, so the link's below here, patreon.com Buster Birch, and if you go along to there, you can now make donations by Visa credit card, so you don't have to use PayPal if you don't want to do that. And the advantage of Patreon is that once you do it once, it will automatically deduct on a per show basis. So instead of having to fill in the forms every week, if you want to make a regular donation, then that will just automatically deduct straight to your credit card each per show. And that is hugely helpful to me because it means I know that I've got a certain amount coming in every time I do a show, and that really helps me plan ahead and keeps the viable sustainability of the show going. There's 2 levels of sponsorship. There's my silver and gold membership. All of my Patreon supporters will get a big thank you personally from me live on the show, and the gold member sponsors will get an additional Spotify playlist which will be sent to you each week. It's something that I'm putting together. It's personally curated by me and will feature lots more albums by the guest artists each week. So it's a great opportunity to get to know this music much better. If you're really enjoying the show and you like the little tasters that you're hearing, that's a great way to get to know this music even more and enjoy in full comfort the full sound of the full albums. Thanks very much. Back to the show. Yes, that's right. And once again, I'm here with Mark Lockheart. That was beautiful, absolutely beautiful track and a lovely album. We saw some pictures there as well. That you did. We were saying you did a couple of concerts, but only a few with Kenny, with the choir and everything, and with that project, didn't you? At the time,
I think it was only a couple of concerts we did, unfortunately.
You were saying to me that. Sorry, you were saying there's some more music to come.
Well, no, I think Pete Churchill. He there is music. Kenny's written a load of some more music for the same kind of lineup, and we were going to do that. And Dave Holland was going to play the bass, but of course with COVID, everything's been put back. But hopefully that will happen at some point. Right.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. Yeah. Okay. So, well, we're doing all right. We've got a few more to go, and so we're going to look now at this Days on Earth project, which is this album, very very ambitious project where you composed for a jazz group with a string orchestra as well. How did that come about? Was that a commission you got for writing?
No, it wasn't a commission. It was just a kind of desire to write for a large amount of people. So I started to write this music. And then I thought, well, how am I going to do this? I can't I can't just phone up 40 people.
Doing the scratch cards, trying to get the budget together. Yeah.
I thought, I have a cunning plan. I will go to the College of Music that I teach at.
Very good.
See if they're interested. So what happened is they were interested, and I then got Sirius involved to come in and pay for some of it, to pay for the professional musicians to come and work with the students, and then we had this project.
Right.
And it was great. So it started at Trinity. Again, it had Seb Rochford, Tom Herbert, Liam Noble, John Paracelli, and me as the professionals, and then the rest of the band was students.
Right. Yeah.
And so, to cut a long story short, we rehearsed it. I changed quite a lot of the music as it went on. I learned an awful lot about writing for strings that I'd never done before, and harp. And we did a little gig at the London Jazz Festival in the foyer.
Yeah.
And then a year later, I decided I'd record it. So I recorded it, but I booked professionals to come in, and we did a record at British Grove Studios with professionals, and that
with a full orchestra, professional orchestra.
Well, it turns out it was a small orchestra. It was 18 strings in the end. Brass, 6 brass, 4 woodwind. And the idea really was like a jazz kind of quintet within an orchestral setting. So there was the jazz quintet as the kind of in the foreground, and then the orchestra around it. That was the concept of it.
Fantastic. So had you written it all by the time you took it to Trinity, or were you still was it still kind of sketches at that point, and you were kind of fleshing it out as you were going along?
It was still sketches, yeah. And I was workshopping it and still trying to find out how best to do it, really. And
well, I must say it's a very clever way to get it done. It's a very good idea, actually, isn't it? If you got, but I mean, they're not taking a risk on. They know it's going to be great, aren't they? Because they know you're doing it. So, and at this point, you've been teaching at the conservatoire for quite some time as well. So it seemed like a good opportunity. Was it one of those collab things they were doing?
It wasn't a collab, no. But I mean, in effect, it was, because we had classical students playing jazz music, so they were getting exposed to playing.
I think it's a brilliant idea. What a great opportunity! There's not enough of that, is there? I mean, it's, even nowadays, now, after all this time, the conservatoires, they're still. I mean, they do projects and things, but it's still kind of. I mean, I don't think so much amongst the students. The students tend not to think like that, do they? They're a bit more open, but it's still a bit us and them, and kind of City and United, isn't it, with the departments? And do you know what I mean? Like, and I think we're kind of all over it now, aren't we? But just from a merely practical point of view of scheduling classes and things, it's definitely a tale of two cities, isn't it? Most conservatoires.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be, because it's an important skill for any working musician to be able to play in both those genres, if you like.
And with everything crossing over nowadays as well, and I think it's a healthy thing, isn't it? And students are generally very open, aren't they, to all sorts of things?
They are.
Anyone's iTunes folders, and you'll be surprised what you see in there, and it's across the board, isn't it, now, with what people are listening to. So it does seem a shame that those lines are still kind of drawn to the extent they are. I'm sure it's a lot better than it used to be, but what a great experience then for everybody, and what a great way to kind of get that to happen.
I think it was yeah.
So what we've got is we've got a film of the gig at the London Jazz Festival with so this is the band with your main guys, your main lineup with the 6-piece. So it's John Paracelli, who was on the show, Liam Noble, who was on the show, and and Seb and Tom on the bass and drums, and
right.
and then and there's a saxophonist stood next to you, features quite prominently. She was a student at the time, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, she was.
Does a great job.
She does a great job. She came in and she kind of blew us all away, really. She slotted straight into the kind of concept of it. And then when I moved it into a professional thing, when I recorded it, I asked Alice to come and play the sax.
Right.
So she was the only student on it. But
great! Oh, great! What a great
thing. So it was really nice. I mean, I think she'd left by that point, but she was,
I suppose that meant you had to pay her then as well, did it?
Yeah, that was the only downside. Yeah,
the only downside. Yeah. Well, once again, we've had to fade this out, but if people want to watch the whole thing, it's on YouTube, so that's pretty easy to find. I'll put a link below again. It's not there now, but it'll be up later. So this is from 2016 London Jazz Festival. Does that sound right?
I think so. Yeah.
And the album is Days on Earth if people want to get the album. And the track we're playing is called Believers, although they've got a different title on this because the project was given some other title as well. Is that right?
It was a working title of Brave World that I changed later, so you just got to kind of ignore the Brave World bit.
Okay, fantastic. This is Believers, which is on the album. This is the live show from London Jazz Festival. Here we go then. Yes, fantastic music there. It's a great achievement, Mark. And we have to just give a little name check there to Alice Leggett, who I'm sorry we had to cut off just as she was starting her solo, but we haven't got time to play it all. But again, if people want to check the full thing out, it's on YouTube. It's very easy to find. Great guitar solo there from John Paracelli, who's astonishing musician, and as I say, was featured on the show a few weeks back. So do check that out if you want to hear a bit more of John's music. I was saying, like, the writing's really interesting, Mark, because they're not just playing like backings, are they? The strings are really integrated with what you were doing. They were like really up in the head, if you like, want for a better word, And I thought it's really you really balanced it nicely with the different instruments, with the two. It wasn't like us and them, you were all. It was very much integrated. Was that? I don't know. How did you?
I'm glad it comes across that way. I mean, I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to just have strings backing everything else, and just supporting the harmony. So on that piece particularly, they're as rhythmic as anyone else. They're playing a kind of rhythmic role,
And the students handled it very well, did they? I mean, their standard's so high now, isn't it? Most music colleges. I mean, I would imagine. Or was there much sort of like tussling with the?
I think they were challenged. I think they were challenged rhythmically by it. Right. I mean, we were as well. The jazzers.
Yeah, it's not easy with those odd times.
With that piece particularly, because it's in 5 and then 6, so it's in 11 basically. So they did find it tricky, some of it, but that's why they're there, isn't it? That's why they're at college, to be challenged. And but no, just going back to the writing, I wanted to, because I'd never written for strings really, I kind of just wanted to kind of experiment, so I kind of started to write in a way that I knew would work with the other instruments, so some of it's kind of big bandy, some of it's a bit Motowny, like the strings are used on Motown records sometimes, but they're kind of soaring away with a line. I kind of wanted that on some of it. So
but then every now and again they come in with a very dramatic, something as well, don't they? It's really,
exactly, like kind of cartoony.
They're quite prominent,
Yeah, exactly. They are quite prominent, And it would have been nice when I recorded the record to have had the money to, to book more players, because I had 18. If you've got 25, it's a much bigger sound again. But
I'm interested how much it ended up what you thought it was going to be when you originally envisaged it. Was there what was the evolution of that? Was that kind of what you imagined when you first started writing, or did you just think, I just want to write for some strings and I'm not sure, I'm not sure where I'm going to take it, I'm just going to do it and see what happens? Or did you have this thing in your head that you go, I've got to get that down and get that out? Was it like one of them?
Well, it started as one piece, so one small piece. The album's got 6 or 7 pieces on it, so it started as one piece. And when I'd finished the first piece, that kind of opened the door to something else, So another idea became the germ of the next piece. But as I was composing up here in this room, it was a very interesting process, because I would come and chip away at it, and I'd go through times thinking, it's not very good, and maybe all this is a bit expensive and not worth it. So thinking, this is going to be really nice, So it was, and with writing, it's a mysterious process, because as soon as you get something that sounds like nothing else, you get excited by it, Or I do anyway. I get excited. I think, of course, it does sound like something else. It's always going to sound like something else. But if you can get excited about something that you find, it opens the next door, and you're into the next thing. It's a lovely process when it's rolling like that,
And the other thing I think was interesting for writing, we've talked about on this show as well, for jazz, when you play in a band, something like, say, the Perfect Houseplants, or even with something like this. Now, but I'm guessing, I'm presuming, but I'm guessing that when you got this project together, you're thinking, right, I want Liam and I want John, and do you know what I mean? You're not thinking I want a piano and a guitar.
No,
right? You're
no.
thinking of the guys, right? So then you can write for them because you know them and you know they're playing very well. But when it comes to writing for the strings, you haven't got that kind of like background to that. So was there much kind of like, did you have to adjust a lot of things, or was it because I think it was Scott was on here, or it might have been Howard. We were talking about, there's a couple of guys I've had on compose for orchestras and operas and that, and I think one of them said about like this thing about when you write, do you write for what you write what you hear and it's their problem, like let them deal with it, or is it like, well, I better write for who I'm writing for to get a better performance? Or do you know what I mean? There's kind of two schools of thought about that, isn't there, when you come to playing orchestral, which is quite different for writing for in a jazz world. You know who you're writing for, you know what they can do, and so you can already kind of hear it and you write to their strengths. But when you're writing for a string orchestra, who you obviously don't know who the musicians are going to be, but you know it's a student string orchestra as opposed to the LSO, say. Are you sort of tempering your thing there, or are you just thinking, I'm just going to write what I write and then see what they do with it? How did that kind of work out?
Well, I mean, with this, there's obviously the two strands. There's the strand that I'm writing for the jazz element that I know who I want, and then there's the strand that are the more generic kind of players are going to be, you know, for want of a better way of putting it. So I would, for the jazz musicians, I would write how I wanted. I was hearing them very vividly in my imagination.
Yeah.
For the rest of, for the strings and the brass, I was just hearing those instruments, and I wasn't really thinking about who was going to play it.
But did it come out like, did you find that you had to adjust much, or was it kind of pretty much as you envisaged it at the end?
No, there was a lot of adjustment, you know, particularly with ranges and doubling, you know. One of the big lessons for me was unison, and how just having something in octaves has such an impact. You know, it's a very simple thing, but that was something that I didn't really understand.
So this is more about the craft of kind of writing for strings and that whole discipline of, which is another whole world, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and balance. You know, you can do a masterclass, you can do a whole PhD on orchestral balance, and I'm only just at the kind of just finding out about it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know,
fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating, you know. And people who write all the time for orchestras, they're experts at that. They know what instruments go together. They know all the sweet spots on the instruments, which ranges are the most amazing ranges. All that stuff, you know. It's a whole thing, you know.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's a great achievement what you've put. I mean, to get all that together for a start. But I just think it's worked. You've managed to pull them two things together so well, and they obviously all had a lot of fun playing it as well. But I think it really works as a piece and as a concept. And congratulations on that. Another great project. The time's moving on. We've got a few more tracks to play. So. What I'd like to look at next, you've picked a track, a duet track with Huw, and something that does come up a lot on this show as well, where we find, I think again, maybe it's not just a jazz thing, maybe this is true of other genres as well, where you meet someone and you have a musical connection. And then you do a lot, you know, of work over decades, really, we're talking about. And these kind of musical partnerships, they can run very deep, can't they? And it can be quite a sort of magic thing. And you've clearly got that with Huw as well, amongst other people, of course. And you made this record, which is from a gig. You did a live concert in Italy, and you had it...
In a vineyard.
In a vineyard?
In a vineyard, yeah.
It's outside, is it?
It was bound to be good, wasn't it?
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. In an Italian vineyard. Wow. Yeah.
There is a bit of a story with this, because unfortunately it wasn't outside. It was inside, in the basement, in the freezing cold, where they keep their kind of
the cellar where the wine is. Yeah.
They're very expensive wine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to be inspired though in surroundings like
Yeah.
that, isn't it? But there's something about the way you two play together. It's really wonderful. And you had this, so you were doing this concert, and this was kind of arranged. They were going to record it, and you got a fantastic sound. It's a lovely recording. And so you made an album it's a live concert, but it's actually an album now as well, a live album.
Yeah, Cam Jazz asked Huw to do a duo record in Italy,
Right.
in a wine cellar. Well,
Right.
a winery. So he phoned me up and said, did I want to do it? Yes, of course I want to do it.
Let me just think about it for a minute.
Yeah, let me just think about it. So we thought about tunes, we rehearsed, and we went to Italy, and it was all going great. We had this fantastic lunch, and even a glass of wine in the morning when I arrived in Italy. And then they showed us where we were playing, and it was the basement of this winery, and it was freezing cold. So I play a metal saxophone.
Oh, and it's not good for pianos, that either, is it?
No, it was a nightmare in a way. But we were lucky. In the afternoon, we managed to rehearse quite a lot, and they recorded some of the rehearsal as well as the gig.
Right.
So there are a few bits that are from the rehearsal.
Right.
And we did the concert. Concert was fine. It was from an audience point of view, but we both came off stage and we said, "Oh, I don't think we've got anything that's worthwhile here."
Oh.
And then I couldn't listen to it for a few months, and then because I was so nervous about the tuning, because I was struggling all the time to play the saxophone in tune, particularly the soprano.
Oh yeah, that's famously challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, and after a couple of months, we both listened to it and we liked it, and we said, "Yeah, it's got something. Maybe the cold had something to do with making it good in the end." So that's the story.
Fantastic. Well, let's hear a track from that. And this is and the album is called New Day, and so the concert was in 2018, so fairly recent. It came out on Cam Jazz 2019, and the album's called New Day. Features Huw Warren on piano. My guest Mark Lockhart on soprano. This one, isn't it? And the track is called In February. February.
Which is by John Taylor, by the way.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Wonderful, yes, and I think you'll agree, folks, that came out beautifully, wonderful. And there's a couple of pictures there as well from the concert that Mark sent us, amongst some other stuff. So, yeah, beautiful music, and yeah, I bet like we were just saying, sometimes you don't listen to things for a little while, do you? And then you hear it again, and you go, oh, actually, it sounds quite nice because you're hearing it fresh, aren't you? I think if you listen too soon, you're kind of listening for certain things that you remembered about it, and quite often it can't be,
especially if the circumstances are quite difficult, which they were on that. But I mean, I've always loved Huw and I go back such a long way. We never even talk about phrasing or anything because we just know how each other's gonna play. It's one of those very special.
That musical telepathy almost, where you've done that much together. You're finishing each other's sentences like a married couple almost.
Exactly.
Musically.
It is like that. Yeah. It is exactly like that, yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, great. So we've got another completely different project now. Very interesting album that you made. Salvator Mundi, is that right? Did I screw that up? That's
correct.
Right. And So this is you playing some classical music in a church with an organist, and but there are some genuine sort of legit classical pieces, as it were. But you're improvising on them as well, aren't you? Is that right? Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. So this came about from a friend of mine, John Ashton Thomas, who I was at college with, who's a writer.
No.
And he asked me how I felt about recording some classical pieces with an organist in Temple Church in London.
Right.
And he said, if you're into the idea, I'll do the arranging. So he did all the arranging of these tunes, and he wrote some of his own pieces for it.
Oh, so the organ part's all written.
It's all written. I'm playing some tunes, and then I'm departing and going into improvisation.
Yeah.
But the organ's all written by John.
Right.
And so John chose these pieces, and we went into these incredible acoustics of Temple Church and played this music, and it came out really beautifully, I think. I mean, I've always liked it and always enjoyed listening to it, and didn't cringe too much with it like I do with a lot of things.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's absolutely amazing. Amazing, beautiful playing, beautiful sound as well. I must admit, when I first sort of saw it, and I was thinking, organ and sax, because a couple of weeks ago we had Howard Moody on, who played with John's sermon on organ and sax, But this is quite different to that, isn't it? Because that John's sermon thing was like the kind of original tunes, little folky kind of melodies, a bit not without. Oh, I'm not. I'm not sort of saying that, diminishing that in any way. But it has a particular flavour, doesn't he, in his style? But this is not that at all. I didn't get it. This is not, and this is so. It's got much more of a classical music kind of feel to it and sound to it. But it still sounds like you when you're improvising, which I think is really interesting. It's a great achievement, I think, musically.
Oh, thanks. I mean, the priority, or the thing that's important about this is the melodies. So that was the primary thing, was embellishing the melody, improvising around the melody, always keeping it. So it's almost like an old classical approach where you have the melody and you embellish it.
Yeah, well, this is interesting because
rather than depart on a big
go into a load of bebop jazz, having just played a sort of bit of early classical music. Yeah, that's not going to work at all, isn't it? I think that's why it's so good. I think you really pull that off. You stay within the language of that music, I think, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Was that a very conscious thing, or did you just find yourself putting yourself in that musical situation? Did you find that it drew this out of you, or was it like a conscious thing? I'm going to go and do that, and I've got to sort of stick in this vein, or are things ever that conscious? I don't know.
No, I found it incredibly natural just to kind of play the melody in my own way, and then kind of explore a melody, and going back to working with the Orlando Consort, we soon realized that all the modes that early musicians use, the same modes that we use as jazz musicians, the Dorian, Aeolian, Mixolydian, it's all the same.
Yeah.
the same language, so I felt completely at home, really, playing in this wonderful acoustic with this fantastic organist, So,
But there's something different about the phrasing, even, I think it is. I mean, without getting too kind of analytical, I suppose. It's just, I think, do you just sort of you have to get in a certain headspace where you're hearing it in a certain way that then kind of dictates how you play? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. Maybe that I'm just trying to sort of get
I
into
think
the process.
yeah, I think it's different from jazz in the sense that rhythmically it's very drawn out. It's not rhythmically kind of busy in any way,
Yeah.
But for me, it's natural. I mean, I grew up in Hampshire. I was exposed to church music. I went to Sunday school. I didn't grow up in New Orleans.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
So
yeah.
the geography of where I'm from.
Yeah. It's more
It
natural.
Kind of,
yeah.
It kind of resonated being in this church, playing these beautiful. And by the way, they're all by English composers. So it's William Byrd, John Blow, Thomas Tallis, who were all English.
Right.
So there's probably some subconscious connection with me in there somewhere of hearing music, because I would have heard it probably, some of these tunes.
It's very interesting, because it does sound very honest, kind of like approach to it. I guess that's what I was trying to get to.
That's nice that it comes across like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, let's hear it. It's only a short track. It's only 3 minutes, and this is the title to the track. The album is out on Edition Records, and this is from 2019. Again, a fairly recent album, and this is Salvator Mundi, and here we go. Yeah, that was fantastic. There you go, folks. That was wonderful. I love that. That's absolutely beautiful, Mark. Absolutely incredible. And we should say, of course, the organist there is Roger Sayer, who was you were saying he's the
choir master at Temple Church, and he's the organist, one of the main organist at Temple Church. He's a fantastic organist.
Yeah.
He played on the soundtrack of Interstellar, Ridley Scott film. If anyone's seen that,
yeah,
it's all organ. It's all him playing on that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, the time has got us, and but we've managed to get in quite a lot of music tonight, and it's been fantastic. And this great selection. We're going to play out when we finish with another track, which is our exclusive. We've got a little pre-release here. So this is the new band which we started off at the top of the show talking about, which you've just got together, and unfortunately the gigs got cancelled. So this is your latest project, which features Elliot Galvin on keys, Tom Herbert on bass, and Dave Smith on drums. And I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing this. This is a really hot, hip band, and very, very interesting music once again. But is this a kind of collection in terms of the writing? Is it all your stuff, or is there a mix of stuff, or do you get together and jam things and work out? How does the music come about for this? Is it things you kind of heard and wanted to?
Yeah. So far it's all my music.
Right.
That I've been quite specific about, but I'm hoping once we start gigging and it becomes maybe other people bring some writing to it, but at the moment it's my music. But it's a bit of a change of direction. So it's kind of electronics, so it's keyboards, electric bass. It's a very different sound world for me, but I'm really excited about it. And at the moment, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm remotely mixing it with someone, with Alex Bonney, and it's taking a long time because I'm having to, write copious notes and then get him on the phone, and then
it's the dark arts, isn't it? Mixing.
Whereas I'd be sitting next to Alex, and we'd be mixing it in a
so it's more
two,
yeah. And
anyway,
also, you're hearing it on different things, so it just sounds different anyway. So you're kind of going around in circles a bit, aren't you? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but yeah. I'm very excited about this band, and
and of course Elliot, people may know from working with Laura Jerd, and is it Dinosaur, that band that they have, which is a great band, and then of Tom, who's from Polar Bear, of course, who you've worked with a long time, and he's electric. He was playing acoustic bass in Polar Bear, but he's a great electric bass player, isn't he? And I think he featured also. He's got a band with Liam, isn't he? They're doing something. Liam played some new stuff that with Tom.
That's right. Yeah,
and Dave Smith on drums as well. Great drummer. So fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're going to play out on that and leave that for you guys. So it just leaves us to say thank you for coming in, Mark. It's been great playing all your music, and you've been a great guest, as I knew you would be, and I appreciate your time. And it's always nice to chat and hang out and talk to you. So
it's been great. Thank you for inviting me. It's been brilliant. Good fun.
Pleasure. And thanks everybody for tuning in and for all your chats. And as I say, if you have enjoyed the music and you've enjoyed the show, then please do consider a donation, because it's just about all we got keeping us going at the moment. And until the gigs start rolling back in, all the links are below. I'll try and put some of those. I'll put some of those the 2 YouTube videos. I'll put the links in the descriptor below. And next week I've got another great musician and a good friend of mine. Is a multi-instrumentalist, very interesting guy, composer, producer, and great multi-instrumentalist, Adrian Zolotuhin. So we're going to have a little bit of Russian flavour next week as well. A bit of the kind of world music mixed with jazz as well. So looking forward to that. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and hope to see you next week. Do tune in. And thanks again, Mark. Nice to see you, mate.
Thank you.
Take care and see you all soon. Good night. This is Dreamers is the track. Yeah. Here we go.